Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Blatstein, the physician founder of Physician Presentence Report Service. So, as you can see, here's my website. And today I'm going to be discussing what happens when the feds make their surprise visit with the alphabet agencies to your home early in the morning. With the website, Physician Presentence Report Service, that's me. My phone, 240-888-7778. I return and answer all my own calls. So if by chance you call and I don't answer, please leave a brief message. I will return your call. This right here is a YouTube that I'm going to try playing at the end of my YouTube today because it's by Admiral William McRaven, who was with the Pentagon, ran the raid on Osama bin Laden in 2021, but specifically because in this 10-minute video, he reviews leaders from Mandela to this young girl in Pakistan, Malala, who, when she was in elementary school or junior high school or middle school, because she wanted to get an education, the Taliban came on the bus and shot her in the eye. It didn't kill her, but it's inspirational. The goal is you don't want to give up. Prison is temporary. Um, I don't, each one of us deals with this um, in a different way. I mean, for me, I was panicked and I was just a mess. And I'm grateful that I was able to get my medical license back to practice, but I didn't know that at the very beginning. And my ability to pick out attorneys was not great. And there's just a lot I didn't know. But this is the website, and this will be the YouTube that I'm going to try and tack on at the very end. We'll see if I'm successful. This is my second attempt to do the YouTube. For some reason, my microphone cut out on me, and so my recording wasn't great. In fact, there was nothing. So here we're going to start. Little picture here to begin with. As federal agents poured into your home, I don't know what you were feeling, but I was like, oh my God. And so this is your what do I do next? This is going to be your personal guide. And I'm not sure that this updated. Let's see if this updated. There it is. I didn't even update this. This is your personal what do I do next guide. No one wakes up one morning and they're going to decide to break the law and wind up ending up in federal prison while thinking that all along that's really not where I want to be. And so my goal here to start off with is just take a breath. It's a 10-minute YouTube video. And Admiral McRaven was inspired by leaders, as I said, from Mandela to this young girl in Pakistan, Malala, who was shot on a bus going to school or coming from school. And she went on to win the Nobel Prize. And so you don't want to give up, really. It's worth the fight. So here are the outline, the topics. Rumors or a target letter, or you wind up with a personal visit by the FBI. Either way, the first thing you need is legal representation. You want to hire the right attorney. That means it's not the first attorney that you talk to. You want to you want to interview lawyers. When I had a hip replacement, I went and spoke with at least 5 before I chose the attorney. I mean, the surgeon. They did my hip. You want to participate in your own defense. How? Well, I can tell you that I was not a good participant. I was just a mess. Again, I was not a good I was not a good defendant. The most important person you're going to meet, and I'll tell you, it's not going to be your judge. You want to help your lawyer and your probation officer, your judge, your prosecutor. You help them all at the same time. And other stakeholders you've yet to meet. And stakeholders, which all of these are the same, stakeholders have a vested interest in who you are and how you come through the prison process successfully as a changed person. Sentencing day preparation. And this includes your allocution, which is a conversation with the judge, and a realistic sentencing request under the guidelines, and a placement request that your attorney has previously reviewed, hopefully gotten agreement with the probation officer before you've had your interview. And the prosecutor may not agree, but at least they'll agree not to raise objections. And then you want to make a placement request, and there's this 3-step process that your attorney will go through. So federal judges, they're going to agree to, you want to start for sentencing, really prepare for sentencing on the day that you meet counsel. And there's a federal judge, Patrick Schultz, and a federal judge, Robert Scalia. The first federal judge, it's surprising how many otherwise competent attorneys punt at the sentencing hearing. Federal Judge Scalia, don't wait and think about sentencing advocacy, since 99% of federal criminal clients are going to face sentencing. You want to start early on. So they both quote the same article written by attorney Alan Ellis, who is past president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and they've been writing, or he's been interviewing judges across the country. And so let me find a few. Mark Bennett, Northern District, Iowa. I quote him in here. He said he gets annoyed when lawyers cite Booker in the sentencing memorandum. Lawyers know, or rather, judges know the law. Let me go get something a little bit better here. Clients need to sell themselves. They want to see a client who's internalized what they've done so they can determine whether the defendant has seriously taken the responsibility and is truly remorseful. The allocution can play a big part in humanizing the defendant to the judge. And so, and they go through, this is John Levy in Portland, Maine, and what the defendant has done since being apprehended. For example, if you've been apprehended, has the defendant taken advantage of any rehabilitation programs performing usual service? They want to see, what you've been doing if you were remanded right away. Similarly, another judge has said in the District of Columbia, it's helpful when a defendant who is intelligent educates or tutors others. And again, goes for people who have already been incarcerated. Scalia in Florida says you suggest that have a colleague listen to your client's proposed allocution and ask him questions that the judge may ask. This goes to preparing the defendant for the allocution. Don't let him go in right away. For restitution, and I'll go into this in my through the YouTube. So there's more stuff that I'm already going to cover, but this link is available. Rumors. Let's start with one. Rumors, target letter, or a personal visit. First thing you need to do is get legal representation. So you're going to face the alphabet agencies when they come through your door one morning. It's surreal and terrifying. And you'd be abnormal if you weren't panicked at that point. And the alphabet agency, it's FBI, it can be state police, local police. It can be a volley of OPM. It can be a volley of different policing agencies. And what the letter can look like is, let's make sure that we are right. And so can sample target letter, and we will make this bigger so you can read it. It's the letter supplied to a witness to appear before a grand jury. Help provide background to the grand jury. Well, if you get this letter to appear before a grand jury, my recommendation is get an attorney first. You can't not respond, but you need to get to an attorney first and then begin the process. I wouldn't just show up willy-nilly at the grand jury. Federal cases usually result in prison. As by the time you hear about this, the Department of Justice, their case against you is mostly complete, and they have a conviction rate approaching 98%. Hiring the right attorney. This is big because hiring the right attorney, you want to interview more than one because it's your future, it's your life. And so you want to ask the right questions. So what does that mean? Let's click this link here. We're going to pull this up. And so we're going to ask the right questions, choosing the right attorney. First, you want to know that they practice federal criminal defense and they practice in federal court. Then you want to know if they have experience in cases, in defending cases like yours. It may sound like common sense, but trust me, when I've had clients that they've had attorneys that after the fact and they've been sentenced only to learn that, well, they practiced a little bit of federal criminal defense and a little bit in federal court, but mostly it was personal injury and in state courts. Next, you want to know if they've handled cases like yours. It's important. They should be willing to provide you several, just a few past clients for you to speak with. They'll call and they'll ask a couple clients if it's okay, just to ease your fears and concerns. Nobody's going to be happy going to prison, but maybe the family will be okay to talk to you. The person may actually be in prison. Several sentencing memorandums. What you want to do, the memorandum is at the end of the case, about a week to 10 days before sentencing is when the attorney writes the summary of your case that goes to the court, to the judge. And it should be specific to you. It should not contain legal jargon. And so you want to read several of these and make sure that they're different. They shouldn't read the same because they're about individual people. And so the attorney could tell you that, well, there's HIPAA and privacy laws. And agree, that's true. Except that when you have these PDF documents, on a PDF document, they actually can be redacted or blacked out. And so you just want to look at a few. I mean, if they have lots of cases, that should not be hard. Mind you, everything I'm asking, almost everything I've learned subsequent to my case, 2006, I was convicted of a felony. I'm grateful that I was able to get my medical license reinstated to practice medicine, but I didn't know any of this. And so please listen to everything I say because this is valuable information I wish I had to go forward. You may want to just break the ice a little bit, talk to them, find out a little bit about them. Where did they go to school? Why did they choose practice? Why did they want to practice federal, practice law? Why federal criminal defense? What's the most interesting case result that they had? Just learn a little bit. Ask about them. People like to talk about themselves. Ask them when do they recommend beginning to prepare for the pre-sentence interview and the sentencing hearing. This is not a trick question. Go back to my very first page. Two federal judges. It's surprised how many otherwise competent attorneys punt at the sentencing hearing, again, failing to prepare. The other one, don't wait to think about sentencing advocacy. 99% of criminal clients are going to face sentencing. Start preparing early on. This is not a trick question. So the best answer is yesterday. Ask about hourly or flat fees. Flat fees. Maybe there's a schedule that you can do. If you want to go to trial, you want to find out how many trials or appeals have they done and what percentage of them have they won? Easy question. And then going to trial, feeling that you're right is not enough. You really need to have all your T's crossed, I's dotted. I mean, you really have to have evidence because by the time you're learning about it, the government thinks that their case is complete. And so you need to with your attorney, you just need to find out how many have they won and how many have they lost and why did they lose and why did they win and what percentage have they appealed and have they won and have they lost, because you need to be prepared to lose. If you win, everybody's happy, but you need to be prepared if you lose. And if you lose, remember the entire time, do not anger the court. Do not do what Sam Bankman-Fried did. And he went ahead. You may not know who he is. Look up, Google his name, but he was witness tampering, and they wound up just taking him in, putting him in jail eventually, right away. And so, don't anger the court. You don't have the notoriety of Donald Trump, which he angered every judge he had, but they just could not put him in jail because he just is too big a public figure. Don't anger the court because eventually you're playing Russian roulette with your life. You're going to have to come back to that judge at some point if you lose, and you're going to have to depend on the sympathy of the court to get some sort of relief. Okay. With your attorney, you want to know if it's a single practice or only a couple of lawyers, how busy are they? If you call, are they going to be able to take your call? If you call from prison, would they be able to take your call, or are they going to be talking to a paralegal or another small staff attorney? Another attorney there. You want to know if this is if who you'll be talking to. Understand that a federal defender, not all, but an experienced. And so if you're getting a federal defender, how many years have you been practicing? A federal defender, though, who's been seasoned can be just as good, if not better, than private counsel. Why not? While this is not yet law, this is called the Fairness and Restitution Act. Let me see if I can make this bigger again. And so this is between a nonprofit and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And they're trying to ensure fairness, proportionality, and accuracy of the restitution or amount owed. They want to require the government show actual loss sustained by the victim as a direct and proximate result of what the defendant's actions were. Eliminate joint liability and ensure that defendants are only responsible for the financial losses they caused. Provide a right of evidentiary hearing for proving or disproving the amounts included in a restitution order. And again, this is just requesting that the judge consider this because as of October 6, 2024, I don't know that this is even law yet. Preventing restitution obligations from becoming overly onerous or lengthy, meaning that would the judge be willing to change the statutory period of liability from 20 years to 10? And prevent extensions, which are not authorized under the current law, but often permitted by the courts. Allow the courts to consider economic circumstances of a defendant so that defendants are not burdened with unfair, unrealistic restitution requirements. Prevent the seizing or garnishment of wages, benefits, or certain other amounts if it would render the defendant poor enough to qualify for the important appointment of counsel under federal guidelines, and allow defendants to petition for a change in the restitution order if their economic circumstances change. And third, helping victims recover while also helping defendants to avoid burdensome debts. Require that any amounts collected by the government first go to satisfy of a restitution order in cases where both restitution and forfeiture are required. And there are several other things here also. We will continue. What is their opinion providing your sentencing memo, which includes, so you want to see included in the sentencing memo, if your attorney agrees, what they've already discussed with the probation officer before the sentencing interview, the pre-sentence interview, the expectations of including the sentencing length, a realistic sentence length explained under the guidelines that your attorney has reviewed with the probation officer, as well as a placement request of one specific placement, one specific BOP facility before the pre-sentence report is final. And then if you have time to be able to watch your attorney in court. And so there's more information here, but you can go to this part of the website yourself. Next is then regarding appeals, and this I put in here just to kind of lessen the mood, is that little kid beside the motorcycle is saying that teaching lady asked me what comes after a sentence, and I told her an appeal, which in this particular example is false. Participate in your defense. How? Hearts and heartstrings of a federal judge, the right of allocution. Will I get a harsher sentence if you lose a trial after declining a plea bargain? And the answer is probably yes. You're also, though, is what's called a cooperation agreement with the government, which is a 5K 1.1, which is another which is a government agreement with you, which your attorney can go through with you if that comes up. But it's nothing that you may be able to bring this up, but this is between you and your attorney and then with the government. And so this is with an article that is by federal judge Mark Bennett, which is federal judge Mark Bennett right there. And right here, and then he goes through, some of the rules that he's shocked when he goes ahead and he asks the defendant questions, where the defendant then turns around to the judge and says, "Should I say something?" Which happened to me. I was in the court. The judge turned to me and said, "I didn't know I was supposed to talk," which means I was unprepared for this particular this part of my sentencing. And so it just, I don't know what else to say. Is that try and read this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it'll take too much time, but it is available through this particular blog. Allocutions of that work, according to Mark Bennett, federal judge Bennett, and I have a link both to his YouTube and to this. And what he finds important is a sincere demeanor. Let's see if I make that a little bigger. Sincere demeanor, discussions of what taking full responsibility means to the defendant, acknowledgement that there are victims, even if the pre-sentence reports there's no victims, as in most drug cases, an understanding of how the crime affected victims, an expression of remorse, a plan to use prison or probation time in a productive manner, a discussion of why the defendant wants to change his or her criminal behavior, and perhaps most important, information that helps humanize the defendant and the defendant's role in the crime. And all of this is part of the personal narrative, which we will go into shortly. Who's the most important person that you're going to meet? The probation officer who conducts your pre-sentence interview and has sway with your judge. That is the most important person you're going to meet. They have no time and are overworked. Make them your friend and your advocate. How? Where and how long you will serve depends on your interview preparation. And that's you. You can't put that on anyone else. If you provide everything they request, and they're going to have a whole long list of information that they're going to need, from birth certificates to tax information. There's just a lot. If you have everything they requested, organized and spell checked, and you want to have it provided to them 1 to 2 weeks before your interview, all of a sudden they're going to think. They may appreciate the fact that your efforts that you've taken this seriously. They may appreciate the fact that you understand that their time is limited. And this now has allowed them the time during the interview to personally get to know who you are as a person and ask any remaining questions they may have. The probation officer now is going to write the final probation report after after they do their investigation. This pre-sentence report acts as a referral for you. We've all been to the doctor. If you need an X-ray, they're going to give you a referral. Blood tests, they're going to give you a referral. This is your referral for everything going forward for your life in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, for your security level. This is going to go to a stakeholder you've never met in Grand Prairie, Texas. Your medical and mental health care needs that are as basic as they may be, if it's not in your pre-sentence report, it's definitely not going to be available. But if it's noted in your pre-sentence report and it's not available, and the judge notes that it's important and it's not available, now all of a sudden you have a chance at compassionate release through Second Look Act. Psychology programs, very limited availability due to staffing shortages, as well as medical and mental health care needs availability. First Step Back programming, again, based on your pre-sentence report, but also staffing. There may not be available everywhere. Criminogenic needs and your risk assessment. As soon as you get into prison, you need to go to a computer and take your risk assessment survey. Because when you, in the first 30 days, when you meet with what's called your case manager and unit team, they may start giving you First Step Back programs to take. And you understand, or you should know, that once you start taking these programs, you're going to get earned time credits towards early release. Well, they're going to give you the programs, but if you haven't taken that risk assessment, you're not going to get this. You don't get the credits. The Bureau of Prisons uses the same pre-sentence report for prison placement, stakeholders that you've never met. I've already told you in Grand Prairie, Texas. Then probation uses the same pre-sentence report plus your entire file during prison for supervised release. So basically, these probation officers, before you meet them for supervised release, they're going to profile you before you meet. It's not a bad thing. They just need to understand who they're going to meet. And so this is the only way they can do that. Lastly, the same pre-sentence report and your file becomes a permanent part of your record, otherwise known by the inmates as the inmate's Bible, the gift that keeps on giving. 5, you want to help your lawyer, your pre-sentence interview probation officer, the judge, your prosecutor, and the other stakeholders you have yet to meet know who you are. How are you going to do this? Well, you need to take time to draft a well-written personal narrative, a release plan, allocution, and request specific character reference letters. Well, let's jump into this. This is a nice little cartoon rather, goes into a release plan, but we're going to open it up and go into a narrative. Narrative humanizes you to the court and may create interest in your judge to learn more about you at sentencing. This is your moment. Are you ready? Have you taken the time to write a well-written narrative, which is a story that shares your life history while accepting remorse for the victim's harm? This video, I'm not going to play it now, but to summarize, Nike businesses have brands. Nike's brand is their little symbol, check mark, Nike, and then the word "just do it." Wheaties has on the breakfast box the breakfast of champions. Tesla has SpaceX. Well, the Department of Justice has created your brand specially for you, and it's in the form of your indictment. And if you've read it, it probably makes you sound like a very terrible person. If you do not take the time to write your own personal story, autobiography, or your personal narrative of your life, then all the judge will have to sentence you with is your narrative, is your indictment that has been written by the Department of Justice, which is not that flattering and is probably going to make you sound like the worst criminal in the world. And so judges understand that crimes don't happen in a vacuum. And the only person that they don't know is you. And so if you're not sure what to do first, give me a call for a free consultation. My phone's 240-888-7778. I'm more than willing to talk to you. But the judge knows that your attorney is paid to keep you out of jail and say nice things about you. But more important, for your attorney to be able to defend you to the best of their ability, they need to understand who you are. The probation officer who's going to conduct your interview, by providing them with your story, your autobiography, what brought you from childhood to today, what's a series of events that caused you to break the law. I mean, it'll take a long time for you to draft this series of events. And if you can't do it by yourself, find someone who can help you to do it with you. But by drafting your story that humanizes you to your probation officer, that can be, in addition to being embedded or part of your pre-sentence report, it should include all the other parts of the pre-sentence report that the officer needs. The courts and your judge will then read that pre-sentence report. And so they want to go ahead. If your narrative is written and embedded in your report, your judge will likely have read it and learned more about you than what's in your indictment. Depending on your narrative, the judges across the country agree they want to hear from defendants because crimes don't happen in a vacuum. Judges want to know why. After learning the why, do you take responsibility for your actions and have remorse for the harm you've caused? And so, there's more to this, but A factors go to the defendant's role in the offense, the defendant's criminal history, if there were substantial assistance provided by the defendant to law enforcement, defendant's mental condition, what were the nature and circumstances of the offense, your history and characteristics, was there drugs involved in the defense. There's a lot here. Familiar history, marriage, children's responsibilities, the caregiver, medically documented if there's back, hip, shoulder problems, tinnitus, do you need a bottom bunk, diabetic or vascular disease, Raynaud's, medical soft shoes. If you have medical problems, health, medical, emotional health, all medical records are needed, labs, surgery reports, diagnostic x-rays, CTs, MRI, ultrasounds, PET scans, both in written reports and flash drives or CD format, prescriptions for medications. You want to check all of the drugs that are available, medical devices, you need prescriptions for them too. You also want to know if the drugs are on the non-formulary list, because if they are, you won't get them, but you need to have a plan with your attorney. All physicians' contact information, these specific medical needs can be met, and if they are included in your medical history. Diabetic sneakers, soft shoes instead of rigid institutional boots, past medical history, torn Achilles tendon, hips or knee surgeries, being of a certain age, having a certain weight, hernias, no lifting of pounds, helping you, if you can't lift of a certain weight, medical idols, getting you out of, certain activities, substance abuse, you have drugs, legal or illegal, within 12 months prior to your arrest, or that may allow you up to 1 year off your sentence, but they'll do a drug test. There's a lot here. If you have educational or vocational skills, what's your highest level of education? If you don't have a GED, you're going to need to get it once you get into prison. You really should. They're going to encourage you to get your GED. If you have higher education and you're a rocket scientist, bring proof. Otherwise, if you can't prove you're a rocket scientist, they're going to consider that you don't have your GED. If you're in the military, bring copies of your discharge. If you're an entrepreneur and you've been successful in business and you have all kinds of educational degrees, consider teaching a course and be prepared to, maybe put together a little syllabus. You're going to have statements of your financial records, everything. All of this is available through this particular link right here on the picture, as well as right here in personal narrative. And I've gone through all of this right here also. Why is this medical records here important? Well, for one, we'll go up here, and Bardell, like cancer, died. Essentially, let me bring you to the top. Judge held Federal Bureau of Prisons in contempt for allowing for a man to waste away of untreated cancer. And where this jump to here is that the government again opposed Bardell's motion, arguing that Dalton summarized in his opinion it was not even defending Mr. Bell had cancer, let alone terminal cancer. At this time, it discussed the judge ordered the BOP to basically release him. And what the BOP did was they took him to the airport in Houston, Texas, and then just left him on a bench by the airport, took the wheelchair and went back to prison, and he was sewing in his pants. And, it was not for Good Samaritans that helped him actually into the airport. It was just, you can read the article on own, but they forced him to have to pay. It says, although he had to be pushed out of prison in a wheelchair, a BOP band dropped him off on the curb outside Dallas-Fort Worth with a wheelchair, left him there. Bardell was weak as well as bleeding and swelling himself, but he managed to navigate the airport's layovers, connecting through that with the help of Good Samaritans. When he arrived back in Florida to meet his parents, his father had to take off his own shirt, put it on the seat of his lawyer's car to absorb blood and feces, etc. So, you don't want this or anything close to this to happen to you. Judges understand that crimes don't happen in a vacuum. And we've been through this. And we went through the article written by Judge Mark Bennett. Sentencing day preparation. Your allocution. That's your conversation with the judge. And this is a YouTube, but to summarize the YouTube, I give a real life example. Sam Bankman-Fried, essentially, he didn't do much speaking for himself, and his attorneys put in their sentencing memorandum, they did a great memorandum, but the memorandum should have been Sam Bankman-Fried personal narrative, which means it all fell on deaf ears. He didn't accept responsibility. He blamed others. There was no expressing of remorse. He never issued a word of remorse or committing of terrible crimes. His attorney appeared similar in performance to Sam Diddy Combs, in that they were letting a high-income Type A personality dominate their defense. I mean, you can see my articles for Sean Diddy Combs that I wrote something similar. Assumptions are things you don't want to do. If with Sean Diddy Combs, when he surrendered, his attorneys assumed and let him know that he would be, probably likely be giving bail and fitted for an ankle bracelet, equipped with a GPS. You cannot promise or guarantee what any judge or what any judge or the BOP is going to do. You just can't. Attorneys should avoid making promises or giving false assurances. Their role is to provide honest and potentially difficult truths, and are not simply to agree with you, the defendant. This is crucial because predicting a judge's decision is highly uncertain. Counsel has discussed with the officer conducting the interview, and we went through this realistic sentence length under the guidelines and the pre-sentence request, possibility, the prosecutor, or getting the prosecutor to agree or at least not to raise objections. The allocution is now part of where you're accepting responsibility to have remorse for the victim's harms. And if there's going to be restitution, if you have the financial means, pay it. If you can't pay, at least bring a little bit. And the length of sentence and the placement request are based on reasons, medical programs, or other. And when you're making this request, there are the reasons for the request. And it's a 3-step process we'll go through. But here is what the packet is. It goes through the reasons for the sentence request, and I'm going to go through it right here. We have all the different benefits that comes with this particular prison, and they'll go through, and I go through all of the different programs that are available here, and the judge and the defendant and the attorney can see everything is available and then identify what's most important for this particular individual. Then the 3-step process is very simply in making the request. First, you want to see if they are willing to listen. Ask the judge if it's possible. Second, with the packet, would they be willing to review the packet and make this one? You can only request one prison only. And secondly, third, make the request possibly the 3rd week of the month. And then fourth, would the judge be willing to request that the Federal Bureau of Prisons notify the court in writing should they not be able to make the request? And then I go into more explanations here. And if you've done all of this, you and your legal team have done the best that you can do, because ultimately the final decision, the Bureau of Prisons, they have the final say on everything. Bed space availability, faith-based needs, security designation program needs, mental and medical health care needs, the recommendation of the court, that's where your efforts come in, other security concerns of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and then within 500 miles of home. And lastly, I'll add another one, which is the amount of shortages of staff. Lastly, from this attorney, you want to make sure that if you have a financial penalty, that the judge checks the box that reads no interest. And then I have, another educational video here. So lastly, if you have time and if you are so inclined, this video here it's about 10 minutes, Amal McCraven. He reviews from Mandela to a young girl in Pakistan who just wanted to get an education. So she had to be, under like 10 years old. And so if you have the time to listen to this, I'd like you to take your time. And some of the lessons apply here.
Bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be bolt tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of the simple act has been proven to me many times over. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. During SEAL training, the students are all broken down into boat crews. Each crew is 7 students, 3 on each side of a small rubber boat, and 1 coxswain to help guide the dinghy. Every day, your boat crew forms up on the beach and is instructed to get through the surf zone and paddle several miles down the coast. In the winter, the surf off San Diego can get to be 8 to 10 feet high, and it is exceedingly difficult to paddle through the plunging surf unless everyone digs in. Every paddle must be synchronized to the stroke count of the coxswain. Everyone must exert equal effort, or the boat will turn against the wave and be unceremoniously dumped back on the beach. For the boat to make it to its destination, everyone must paddle. You can't change the world alone. You will need some help. And to truly get from your starting point to your destination takes friends, colleagues, the goodwill of strangers, and a strong coxswain to guide you. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we call them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys, from every corner of the nation and the world, always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. Several times a week, the instructors would line up the class and do a uniform inspection. It was exceptionally thorough. Your hat had to be perfectly starched, uniform immaculately pressed, void of any smudges. But it seemed that no matter how much effort you put into starching your hat, or pressing your uniform, or polishing your belt buckle, it just wasn't good enough. The instructors would find something wrong. For failing uniform inspection, the student had to run, fully clothed, into the surf zone, then wet from head to toe, roll around on the beach until every part of your body was covered with sand. The effect was known as a sugar cookie. You stayed in the uniform the rest of the day, cold, wet, and sandy. There were many a student who just couldn't accept the fact that all their efforts were in vain. And no matter how hard they tried to get the uniform right, it went unappreciated. Those students didn't make it through training. Those students didn't understand the purpose of the drill. You were never going to succeed. You were never going to have a perfect uniform. The instructors weren't going to allow it. Sometimes, no matter how well you prepare or how well you perform, you still end up as a sugar cookie. It's just the way life is sometimes. If you want to change the world, get over being a sugar cookie and keep moving forward. Every day during training, you were challenged with multiple physical events, long runs, long swims, obstacle courses, hours of calisthenics, something designed to test your mettle. Every event had standards, times you had to meet. If you failed to meet those times, those standards, your name was posted on a list. And at the end of the day, those on the list were invited to a circus. A circus was 2 hours of additional calisthenics designed to wear you down, to break your spirit, to force you to quit. No one wanted a circus. A circus meant that for that day, you didn't measure up. A circus meant more fatigue, and more fatigue meant that the following day would be more difficult, and more circuses were likely. But sometime during SEAL training, everyone made the circus list. But an interesting thing happened to those who were constantly on the list. Over time, those students who did 2 hours of extra calisthenics got stronger and stronger. The pain of the circuses built inner strength and physical resiliency. Life is filled with circuses. You will fail. You will likely fail often. It will be painful. It will be discouraging. At times, it will test you to your very core. But if you want to change the world, don't be afraid of circuses. At least twice a week, the trainees were required to run the obstacle course. The obstacle course contained 25 obstacles, including a 10-foot wall, a 30-foot cargo net, a barbed wire crawl, to name a few. But the most challenging obstacle was the slide for life. It had a 3-level, 30-foot tower at one end and a 1-level tower at the other. In between was a 200-foot-long rope. You had to climb the 3-tiered tower, and once at the top, you grabbed the rope, swung underneath the rope, and pulled yourself hand over hand until you got to the other end. The record for the obstacle course had stood for years when my class began in 1977. The record seemed unbeatable until one day a student decided to go down the slide for life head first. Instead of swinging his body underneath the rope and inching his way down, he bravely mounted the top of the rope and thrust himself forward. It was a dangerous move, seemingly foolish and fraught with risk. Failure could be an injury and being dropped from the course. Without hesitation, the student slid down the rope perilously fast. Instead of several minutes, it only took him half that time. And by the end of the course, he had broken the record. If you want to change the world, sometimes you have to slide down the obstacles head first. During the land warfare phase of training, the students were flown out to San Clemente Island, which lies off the coast of San Diego. The waters off San Clemente are a breeding ground for the great white sharks. To pass SEAL training, there are a series of long swims that must be completed. One is the night swim. Before the swim, the instructors joyfully brief the students on all the species of sharks that inhabit the waters off San Clemente. They assure you, however, that no student has ever been eaten by a shark, at least not that they can remember. But you were also taught that if a shark begins to circle your position, stand your ground. Do not swim away. Do not act afraid. And if the shark, hungry for a midnight snack, darts towards you, then summons up all your strength and punch him in the snout, and he will turn and swim away. There are a lot of sharks in the world. If you hope to complete the swim, you will have to deal with them. So if you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. As Navy SEALs, one of our jobs is to conduct underwater attacks against enemy shipping. We practice this technique extensively during training. Ship attack mission is where a pair of SEAL divers is dropped off outside an enemy harbor and then swims well over 2 miles underwater, using nothing but a depth gauge and a compass to get to the target. During the entire swim, even well below the surface, there is some light that comes through. It is comforting to know that there is open water above you. But as you approach the ship, which is tied to a pier, the light begins to fade. The steel structure of the ship blocks the moonlight. It blocks the surrounding street lamps. It blocks all ambient light. To be successful in your mission, you have to swim under the ship and find the keel, the center line, and the deepest part of the ship. This is your objective. But the keel is also the darkest part of the ship, where you cannot see your hand in front of your face, where the noise from the ship's machinery is deafening, and where it gets to be easily disoriented, and you can fail. Every SEAL knows that under the keel, at that darkest moment of the mission, is the time when you need to be calm, when you must be calm, when you must be composed, when all your tactical skills, your physical power, and your inner strength must be brought to bear. If you want to change the world, you must be your very best in the darkest moments. The 9th week of training is referred to as Hell Week. It is 6 days of no sleep, constant physical and mental harassment, and one special day at the Mud Flats. The Mud Flats are an area between San Diego and Tijuana where the water runs off and creates the Tijuana Sloughs, a swampy patch of terrain where the mud will engulf you. It is on Wednesday of Hell Week that you paddle down to the Mud Flats and spend the next 15 hours trying to survive this freezing cold, the howling wind, and the incessant pressure to quit from the instructors. As the sun began to set that Wednesday evening, my training class, having committed some egregious infraction of the rules, was ordered into the mud. The mud consumed each man until there was nothing visible but our heads. The instructors told us we could leave the mud if only 5 men would quit. Only 5 men, just 5 men, and we could get out of the oppressive cold. Looking around the mud flat, it was apparent that some students were about to give up. It was still over 8 hours till the sun came up, 8 more hours of bone-chilling cold. The chattering teeth and shivering moans of the trainees were so loud, it was hard to hear anything. And then one voice began to echo through the night. One voice raised in song. The song was terribly outdone, but sung with great enthusiasm. One voice became 2, and 2 became 3, and before long, everyone in the class was singing. The instructors threatened us with more time in the mud if we kept up singing, but the singing persisted, and somehow the mud seemed a little warmer, and the wind a little tamer, and the dawn not so far away. If I have learned anything in my time traveling the world, it is the power of hope. The power of one person, a Washington, a Lincoln, King, Mandela, and even a young girl from Pakistan, Malala. One person can change the world by giving people hope. So if you want to change the world, start singing when you're up to your neck in mud. Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. A brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound for all the students to see. All you have to do to quit, is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to be in the freezing cold swims. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. All you have to do is ring the bell to get out. If you want to change the world, don't ever, ever ring the bell. It will not be easy. Start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never, ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. And what started here will indeed have changed the world for the better. Thank you very much.
And I thank you for staying tuned in. For those of you that stuck with me, I appreciate you taking the time, really, because you didn't have to sit through the video, but I found it very powerful and helpful to myself, and hopefully you did too. I hope you found the video in its entirety helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time, and have a safe day.